My talk tonight is about motivation versus drive. And you can think of it as kind of like semantics, because some people will refer to motivation in the same way that I'm going to refer to drive. But I want to just make a distinction that's going to be useful for us in the future. And I was listening to this very interesting book called Can't Hurt Me. Anybody read this book? It's by a military man. He was in like every arm of the military. His name is David Goggins. And he's a character. He swears the whole time. The whole book is just every other word is like F this, S that, like all this. But he has a great life story. And he makes this point, which is, or this distinction. Are you sure you want it that dark in here, ma'am? I can hardly even see anybody. Let's go a little bit. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, great. So he makes the distinction that I like between motivation and drive, because he thinks of motivation as being something that's fleeting. And his whole life story, I cannot possibly do justice in this quick talk, but basically at some point he was incredibly overweight, and he decided, he's like 300 plus pounds, and he decided, because he wanted to get into this elite force in the military, I've got to drop 100 pounds in 3 months. It was something like that, and as you can imagine, dropping 100 pounds in 3 months is next to impossible. And he had to go outside every day and just run and run and run for hours and hours and hours. And it could be terrible weather, or he could feel like garbage, and he still got himself out there and ran. And I think that the results in a situation like that kind of speak for themselves. Like if you're able to drop 100 pounds in 3 months, that means that you did something very serious. And you know that it wasn't just the work that you were doing with your body. It took some serious mental work as well. And his point is, some days he would wake up and it's time to run. It's like 5 a.m, some obscene hour that everyone else should be asleep. And he doesn't feel like running, but he just puts on his shoes and gets out the door and goes. He said sometimes he would get his shoes on, he would get out the door, and it would be freezing cold, and he'd come back in, and he'd just sit there until he could talk himself into it, and then he went back out and just went running. And he just did this every day, dropped 100 pounds. And there's way more to his story, but this is one of the things that he said that I like the most about motivation versus drive, because motivation is fleeting. Motivation is dependent on our circumstances. Motivation is like, I get up today and it's sunny and it's beautiful. Okay, I'll go out for a run. I get up today and it's cold and rainy. There's no snow here in LA, but you can imagine, those of you who have lived in places with snow, it's snowing out. There's no way I'm going to go running outside. And if it's contingent on that, really quickly, all the things that we want to do in life fall apart, because as soon as it's contingent upon all the circumstances being perfect for us, it's very easy to make excuses and to find some reason that the circumstances are not perfect for the work that I'm trying to do. So instead of needing motivation from some external force, instead of needing to be in the mood, or instead of needing everything to be in the right situation, I have the drive that comes from within myself. And you hear people talk about like the best motivation comes from within, and if you need motivation from outside sources, it's never going to work. Well, so that's the distinction we're making. Drive is like that motivation that comes from within you that is absolutely endless. And if you think of this, in purely physical terms of I'm motivating myself to get out and do work, that's a very simple way and in an important way to look at it. But you've got to have drive in tons of different things in your life. And if we just look at being on time, Miss Macy and I are working on this year, but especially Miss Macy. So it's easy to be on time if everything goes right. And if I had $1 for everybody in the last month who's come into the dojo and complained about the traffic, and that's the reason why they're 5 minutes late, we would have a dojo twice this size already. I mean, everybody, it's the traffic. Look, that is the perfect excuse for everybody in LA. It's the traffic, it's the traffic. Well, you knew about it. It's not like the traffic has caught you by surprise today. It's here every single day. So with Miss Macy, sometimes it's the traffic, sometimes it's I had to drop, Naomi off at piano, or I had to do this, or I had to do that. And she takes full responsibility for it. She knows that it's her job to just leave the house 5 minutes early, but we have to get to work on this. So one of the things that we came up with is if you're even 1 second late, you're doing, what were the options? Plank for 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be continuous, but yeah, Uncle Willie's for 5 minutes. Horse stance for 5 minutes, right?
100 push-ups.
Or 100 push-ups. And as soon as you actually start doing that stuff, you're going to stop being late completely. So she's already stopped being late here for the most part because she knows that bad things are going to happen to her. But I don't know about every other place. And for me, no, Naomi's shaking her head. She's not on time to everything else yet. That's right. I got spies in your house. Look out. But that, that sort of thing is kind of like a cheat, but it can work if it comes from within you. Now, it's not like if I say, Catherine, you've got to be on time every day. It's not going to have the same effect as if I say, Catherine, you got to be on time, or you do 100 push-ups. That's going to have a lot of effect. But it's way more effective if she decides this is what I want for me in my life. This is something that's important to me. And I can't make her do the push-ups. She can, she would never lie to me, but she could kind of weasel her way out of it or pretend that she's going to do it later on to me, but she can't pretend to herself. She knows I'm on time or I'm not. And it's very important when you're talking about getting things done in life to make things black and white, to make things as binary as possible. Because if you take the idea of being late and you put it on like a sliding scale, well, I'm not as late as I used to be, and that's something, right? Well, it's so easy then again to just kind of give yourself a little bit of leeway, and you're talking yourself right out of the thing that you want. A person that has drive, that thought never enters their mind. If you are driven to be on time, you would not say to yourself, well, I'm less late than I used to be. You would never say to yourself, well, the traffic was extra bad tonight. None of those things come into the equation. It's like I was here on time, or I wasn't. And if I wasn't on time, then I immediately go to what can I do to fix that for next time? What is the work that there is to be done? Rather than what somebody that doesn't have motivation does, who doesn't have drive does, which is I start to beat myself up for it, and then I start to kind of get in this state of mind, which is like, woe is me, the whole universe is arrayed against me, and I'll never be able to get this. That kind of mindset is not really helpful. What's helpful is what works for me to get this done in this way, what didn't work for me to not get it done. Well, what didn't work was for me to leave the house 10 minutes before I'm supposed to be at the dojo. So what works for me now is to leave 15 minutes before, that 5 minutes. And man, I've started doing this recently. Let me tell you, the amount of relief that you get when you are arriving someplace and you're there 5 minutes early, it's insane. It's something that I have rarely felt in my life. Like the dojo, if I'm going to be totally honest, is one of the only places that I am ever on time for. And it has taught me the ability to do that I just have not really applied to other places until now. And when you show up someplace 5 minutes early, it's like the world is mine. I can sit here and check my emails, and I can have a conversation with a friendly stranger or whatever I want to do, rather than just being in my head, driving myself insane about all the stress that I caused myself. And there's a whole other thing about self-sabotage and all this that we get into later on. But I just like this distinction of I'm motivated and it's from some kind of outside factor or circumstance versus I'm driven. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts. It's it's black and white. I was there on time or I wasn't. I did the thing that I said I was going to do or I didn't. And I got this in my head because I was because I was reading this book, but also because one of the kids in class the other night, I think it was 2 nights ago, asked me, Sifu, what do you do if you know you're supposed to go to class or you know you're supposed to go to school and you feel lazy and you don't feel like going? And I said, that is a great question. That is a question that you should definitely be asking and getting the answer to. So I opened it up, and without you guys stealing anything that I've said so far, I'll open it up to you guys. What could you do if you're feeling lazy, you're feeling, unmotivated? What could you do to do the thing that you know you're supposed to do, the thing that you don't feel like doing, the very thing that you really just don't want to do? How do you get yourself to do that? And you can forget anything that I've said. There's no right or wrong answer right now. I'm just looking for ideas in a conversation. What can you do? You're going to start by raising your hand and telling me. Yes, ma'am.
I think about how I'll feel when I jump to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think about how terrible it's going to be and how guilty I'm going to feel about not doing this thing. And that's like getting motivation from pain, and pain is a great motivator. Absolutely. What else?
Well, there's just 2 types of motivation, either the reward or the punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the reward as, yes, the relief, or you find something positive. And the punishment, how I came, well, not here, but like if you have a job and you have to be there, you would have a meeting with the U.S. Attorney. If you weren't there,
that's oddly specific.
So,
that's right.
So that's something you just absolutely have to be there.
Those both sounded like pain, but I get your point. I talked about this in a recent talk. The 2 motivators are pain or pleasure or reward, and so you can find either one of those, and you gotta, sometimes you have to use both. But those are the ways that if you're thinking about this, like what's gonna happen after? Either I did it and I get the ta-da, the reward from it, or I didn't do it and I get the I hate myself from it, or the pain. Like, it could be physical pain. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Just do it.
Great. So you stole that from me because I told you that earlier today. Here we go. So Nike, just do it. And this is, so the kids in class said a couple of different things. One of the kids said, I really like this answer. He said, well, if you're feeling tired, just do some jumping jacks. And I said, yes. If you just jump out of bed and start doing jumping jacks, you are going to wake up. Absolutely. It's going to get the blood flowing and you're going to have oxygen in your brain. You're going to be awake and excited and ready to go. And it's like the days when you feel the least like getting out of bed and doing jumping jacks are the days that you need it the most. But even just getting yourself to do the jumping jacks is tricky. And the kids all said some variation of, you gotta find some kind of motivation and, do something that helps you get excited. And that's all true. And I said, absolutely, these are all great things and whatever works for you should do. And one of the best things that you can do is take all of that and just forget it, because it's still in some way relying on you being in the right mental frame. And the right mental frame is my emotions are there, I feel like doing it, I'm happy, I'm in a good mood. And the problem with this is you cannot always control that. As much as we would love to through meditation and mindfulness and the ability to control our thoughts and our emotions, it's still you're not there completely until you're enlightened. So if you are the Buddha, then you can rely solely on being in the right state of mind, because you're there all the time. But until you get there, then you got to recognize, wait a minute, I've got an issue here. If I really want to get stuff done, and I have to be in the right state of mind, that's a problem. So you can use this idea of being driven, but how do you become driven, really? Because being driven, still a lot of people think of that as coming from having the right mental state. It's like I get myself pumped up every day. I do this. I get up and even like David Goggins talking about, like I ran out the door, it was too cold, I ran back inside, and then I just pumped myself up until I could make myself do it. That's great, and sometimes it can work, but what if your mental state had nothing to do with whether or not you got something done? What if you just did it? And today I feel like it, so I do it, and tomorrow I don't feel like it, and I do it anyways. This is like ultimate power, because it suddenly means that whatever I decide to do, and oftentimes it's like I'll make a decision when I'm in the best frame of mind or the best mental state, and then it falls apart as soon as I'm not in that state anymore. I meditated and I was really just like, everything was crystal clear for me, and I knew this is the answer. This is what I need to do. And then I walk out into the world and it beats me down, and I think I can't do that anymore. I give up. I tap. But instead, like, no matter what state you're in, okay, I decided that I was going to do this thing, so I'm going to do it. And it sounds very simple, but I promise you it's even more simple than it sounds. It's literally just you do the thing. And it's the very act of not feeling like it and being in the worst frame of mind and then doing it anyway that gives us the power, the ultimate power, that in any situation I just do the things that need to get done. I do the right thing, whether it's from a moral standpoint or it's from a motivational standpoint or whatever, because I know that it is the thing to do, regardless of whether I feel like doing it or not. And this is, when you master this, you are in rarefied air, because you are now amongst an elite group of human beings that are no longer slaves to their emotions. And it's like, if you are really going to do something that is substantial, like become great at martial arts, that takes so much time and so much effort, that it is, I'm going to suggest it's impossible if you're only doing it when you feel like it. So you're going to find days where you recognize, I don't feel like doing it today, but you do it anyways, and if you do that enough times, then it just becomes who you are and what you do. And as soon as it becomes that, it's like beyond habit. It is just me. Once you have that, then life seems so much easier, because there's no back and forth in your head fighting with yourself, like trying to psych yourself up or convince yourself to do it. You just do it. So when I wake up, I know I'm going to meditate. There is no question about it. Well, maybe I'll meditate a little bit extra tomorrow, or I just don't feel like it. I'm sick. Let me tell you, I've been sick. I've been super sick because I am a man and I complain about being sick like nobody else. I feel it like way worse than all of you guys. Vanessa's the only one who knows what it's like to be sick when you're a man. You feel like this is the worst possible experience that you could have. And yet, I meditate, and I practice martial arts, and I just do the things that I do, because without doing those things, I feel like I'm losing a piece of my soul. I feel like I know it's going to be terrible if I don't do it, but also I just don't know any other way. I don't know how to live my life without meditating. I used to be great at living my life without meditating. I was amazing at just walking through life and not paying attention to anything and not being good at very much and just like generally like zombieing through existence. But now that I have experienced life with meditation every day, I recognize the discipline that gives me, and I see that if I let this break down, everything else is going to break down right away. This is a house of cards, and meditation is like the bottom card that if you take that one away, the whole thing topples down. But I also have recognized that if I am meditating regularly like I want to, and I stop meditating for a day or two, or I don't really stop meditating, but I have like a very short or bad meditation for a day or two, I feel like I'm going insane. I actually feel like I'm completely drowning in my own head. And that's the kind of feeling that you're going to have when you start to get these things that are just part of you. You recognize, like, if I don't do this thing, I am not me. I am no longer myself, not even from a standpoint of like the person who I want to be, but I can't function. It's not right. This feels wrong on a deep visceral level. So part of our job is to get these things that are very important to us to that level, so that it's no longer a question. Once you have one or two things, I'll say even one thing, like for me that thing was meditation. I had one thing that I did every day and I knew I was going to do it. That gave me the wherewithal to be able to apply that to absolutely everything else. And now it's automatic. If I say I'm going to do something, I say it to myself, I say it to somebody else, I do it. And that's not the way that most of us live. Most of us live like, I want to do this, it would be nice, but there's always a way out. There's always like a back door. There's always an excuse. But if we have a relationship with what we decide to do, or like a relationship with our word that is absolutely black and white, and it is absolutely like I did it or I didn't do it, and we get up to this point where whenever I say I'm going to do something to myself, I just do it. I get it done no matter what my mental state is. Then life just becomes so much easier. There's very little battle. I mean, there's still going to be pain. There's still going to be suffering. There's still things that we have to deal with. But so much of life just becomes easy that way. So this is part of our job as a martial artist, is to get something, or get many things, or get the ability to do this with everything. That I don't need to be motivated. I don't need to have, everything go right. I just decide I'm going to do something and then I do it no matter what. And that power to just drive through and get things done becomes infinite. It becomes absolute, and it becomes the way that it is for the rest of your life. I mean, at this point, I would have to do so much work to stop meditating every day. It's unfathomable to me. So I'm just going to do it until I die. It's going to be great. When we meditate, this is part of what we're working on, is, of course, from the motivational level, we're able to control our emotions. We're able to recognize the thoughts that we receive from the outside world, or that we create from our own brains. We recognize the emotional state that leads us to, and then the action that comes from that. And that is, for most of us, for most of our lives, that is going to be the way that we operate. We have the thought, we have the emotion, and then we act from that. So being able to control that process and tip it in the way that we want to go is a very valuable reason to meditate, absolutely. But the other part is, like I've been saying, to just decide you're going to do something and do it, and have it be no questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. It is just the way that I am. I do this thing. I do it every day. And I personally think that meditation is the best thing to use for that, because it's the best thing for you. So if you're going to choose something that you do every day, it may as well be the thing that is going to, give you the most bang for your buck. You're going to get the most out of that 10, 20, 30 minutes of meditation compared to everything else that you could possibly do with that time. So that's what we're going to do right now. And for those of you who are not meditating every day yet, this is the first day of the rest of your life where you meditate every single day, no matter what you feel like, no matter what's going on in your life. You can meditate while you're sitting in the bathroom. You can meditate while you're sitting in traffic for 5 seconds. Like, whatever you do, you just do it, no matter what. Sit comfortably.